Our next conversation today is with State Representative Richard Holtorf of Akron, one of 6 Republican candidates for Colorado's 4th Congressional District, the safest Republican seat in Colorado's congressional delegation. This is the 3rd in the series of those interviews. State Representative Richard Holtorf, there we go. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming in. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for the invitation. The drive from Akron, Colorado was only about 2 hours and 10 minutes. And I'm glad to be in the big town of Denver.
So you want to upgrade your commute from 2 hours to Denver, to cross country to Washington. Let's talk about that. But first, you called for the resignation of the state's GOP chairman, Dave Williams, a couple months before this current groundswell to get him out of his office. If Dave Williams successfully uses your party's resources to win his congressional primary and therefore the seat, is he untouchable? Is it over? Is it just about whether he wins this seat? How does this end?
Well, Kyle, that's a very important question to a larger problem. I served with Dave Williams in the State House. Dave Williams has a unique ability of causing a lot of trouble within an organization, and also he's a very self-serving individual. I watched him try to roll the minority leader at one point in time, at a time which was probably the worst possible time that he could do it because of personality conflicts. And those issues amongst people are very problematic, because I was in an interview earlier and we talked about the state party chair. It's not about personality and people. What it is, it's about the party. And the state chair defines the party and everything it does. Now, Dave Williams has done a lot of things that have been problematic. The first thing he did is try to close the primary. And that took 4 votes and 4 attempts to do that with that voting. And that still has to go through some statutory review and some other statutory activities. The next thing he did is he wanted to endorse candidates before the primary election. And he pushed very hard multiple times to do this endorsement. Another big problem, because traditionally and historically, and folks, for 10, 20, 30, 40 years, the state party has always been an even player with everybody that wants to be in the Republican Party and run for an office, as it should be. It should lift everybody up and try to super elevate anybody that wants to be a candidate. Not have this purity test that Dave has now put in place with a survey and now endorsements. And oh, by the way, Dave selfishly, and I'll call him out without hesitation, selfishly worked the endorsement angle so he could get the coveted, in his mind, Trump endorsement, which he thinks is so important. But as you know, Kyle, Colorado is not a Trump state, and I mentioned that earlier. And there's a lot of reasons why this isn't about a president. This is about representing people in Colorado.
Got a question for you. The thing that has precipitated the largest group of folks coming forward to say that Williams has to go is the anti-gay bigotry that he sent out in a mass email and then on social media, saying that people should burn all pride flags. Does that bother you?
Well, if you looked at my press release, that's not his job. That's not the state party's job. And oh, by the way, we have the Log Cabin Republicans. I know many of them. They're friends of mine. And oh, by the way, most people know they're part of that community. So how do you throw them under the bus with this? And it's not Dave's job, or it's not state party's job to be on the pulpit. It's not their job to preach to Colorado. Their job is to help promote and identify the Republican platform.
It's not the first time he's done it. He told people to convert to Christianity, to give their lives to Jesus at Christmas time.
And I understand that, Dave. If you want to do that, then go to theology school and go become a pastor or a preacher. And there's a place for religion and politics, but we know it's not everything. And what do they say when you go to Thanksgiving dinner? What are the things you're not supposed to talk about around the table? Politics and religion. So he's gone too far. And that shouldn't be the party platform.
But if he wins this primary, and most likely the seat in Congress, is he then untouchable?
Nobody's untouchable. You know that.
What happens?
Well, in my humble opinion, what needs to happen, and I'm not going to speak to a congressional race. You see, what Dave should have done, good sir, is he should have, when he wanted to run for CD4, he should have stepped down from state party and said, I'm not going to be the state party chair because I can't serve two masters.
The way that the vice chair, Priscilla Ron, stepped down to run for Delco Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you. That's respectful. But look what happened, and I hate to pick on Ken Buck. He's such an easy target. But what did Ken Buck do? Remember? He served as a state party chair and a CD4 congressman. And you know what? He didn't do either job very well. And you can look. State party and the Republicans lost a lot of seats under his leadership, and that was unfortunate. But the truth is, I learned this a long time ago through my military service, you really can't serve two masters. You need to focus on one job. And Dave should have stepped down and said, I'm going to run for CD5. Now look at the conflict of interest. How many flyers, how many mailers, how many email pieces are coming out for Dave Williams for CD5 that say paid for by Colorado GOP? Isn't that a campaign violation? Isn't that a conflict of interest? I dare say yes, Colorado. And that's one of the reasons he should have done that, because now he's going to have problems with the FEC, the Federal Election Commission.
Let me ask you something, because you brought up Ken Buck, who you're seeking to replace in Congress. You were kind of out in front of the really strong anti-Ken Buck sentiment in the Republican Party, and now a lot of other Republicans have joined you there. You were out in front of the anti-Dave Williams sentiment, and now a lot of other Republicans have joined you there. A couple of ways of looking at that. One is that you're a thought leader within the party. Another way to look at it is that it takes somebody other than Richard Holtorf saying it to get people on board.
Well, let me opine on that a little bit. I'm very out in front of a lot of things, and I'm an informal leader in the state party. But I'm one person, and I represent Northeast Colorado. As you know, most of the counties within the Republican Party, you've got the big, it's just like in the state legislature, you've got the big urban centers that have more people and have a little bigger stick, as they say, versus somebody from eastern Colorado. But I'm a very well-educated man. I've got 3 degrees, 2 master's degrees. I'm the only candidate that has those academic credentials, by the way. And Bober will talk about her GED, and she's not well-educated, and people should know you ought to seek that in your next congressman. But
You think there's something wrong with her serving in Congress with a GED?
No, I didn't say that, sir.
You said that people should seek out higher education, and you specifically brought up the Congresswoman's GED.
No, let me say this. We should seek to identify a congressperson who is well-educated. I think that matters, particularly as complex as the world is today, particularly geopolitics. Now, I don't want to pivot to this right now. Let me finish answering the question about leadership, and then we'll talk about that, because it's a good direction to go. With respect to Ken Buck and a thought leader, I have a lot of people call me. In fact, I think I've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 county chairs call me to ask me about what are we going to do about Dave Williams. And I've given them my no-nonsense, clear, articulated, professional opinion. Without hesitation, not trying to sidestep the issue, just being forthright and honest with people, because I think that's something that's lacking. And I've said we should have a petition drive, and you know why we're having a petition drive? Because I've talked to enough people, and now we're doing it. And the people that need to do it are those counties and the big counties on the Front Range and the urban corridor. And that's the direction we need to go. There needs to be a time where we have a meeting of the Central Committee, and everything needs to be discussed and held to account. And then we have the vote. Dave may survive that. He may not survive that. That is the will of the Republican Party, and that's the process in the system. So I will tell you that's very important. But the will of the people transcends the will of the person. Dave is not a king, just like Trump's not a king. You know, Dave might worship the ground that Donald J. Trump walks on. But Trump is running for president, and this is Colorado. And we are trying to elect people that will represent Colorado, which you know is a purple state. And some might argue, well, no, it's a blue state. So let's just face reality.
I hear you say that Colorado Republicans need to distance themselves from Trump or not be so worshipful of Trump, but I also don't see a lot of daylight between you and Trump on issues, right? I mean, you're going to vote for him even though he's still a convicted felon. I haven't heard a big policy disagreement between the two of you. So, like, what does that practically mean when you're like, this isn't a Trump state. Republicans shouldn't be all about Trump. But you're all about Trump, right? I mean, I don't get it.
Look, I support Trump's policies. He had a lot of America First is a great policy. Let's talk about putting America first. Okay, when Trump was in office, we didn't have 2 going on 3 world wars. We certainly didn't, Kyle, have the Russian Navy sailing in with warships into Havana, 30 miles off the coast of Florida. When was the last time we saw that? Was it John F. Kennedy? Was it the Cuban Missile Crisis? What about a war in Ukraine? We didn't have a war in Ukraine. I'm the only candidate, good sir, that is a master's degree in strategic studies, a retired Army colonel who graduated from the U.S. Army War College, that understands the world after 5 overseas tours in the Pacific, Europe, the Middle East, 2 combat tours in the Middle East. No other candidate has these credentials. So in a very troubled and dangerous world, wouldn't you want to send somebody to Washington, D.C., particularly if Trump becomes the president, who can say, Mr. President, let's talk about this foreign policy. Let's talk about Armed Services Committee. I'm ready to serve day one on that committee, by the way. Let's talk about what we should do and we shouldn't do in direct and frank conversations. But let's talk about Trump.
Can I drop in an aside here? This is just a quick question. One of your opponents, Mike Lynch, also served, said this week that only people who have served in the military should be able to serve in Congress.
That's ridiculous. That's a foolish statement from Mike Lynch. I don't know why he made it. Okay, here's what I would argue. I would say, maybe only people that served in the military should serve on the Armed Forces Committee in this House. But you can't do that because there's only like 16% of people in Congress, upper chamber and lower chamber, that have served in the military. I think that's a problem, and I think Colorado should change that. I really think Colorado should look very closely at how dangerous the world is, who has that experience around the world, and who can give good guidance to other colleagues, both Democrat and Republican. Here's something you may not know about me, and we can talk about it later.
If I'm not mistaken, the 4th Congressional District has not had a representative with military service since, I think, Hank Brown in the 80s. I think back through who's been in that seat. It's been a really long time.
It's been 30 years.
Yeah, I think it's been
40 years.
That long or longer.
Here's another thing. There hasn't been a congressman from CD4 who's been a retired senior military officer as a retired colonel.
Why does that matter specifically?
Because, I was just back at the United States Army War College just Friday. I went to my brother-in-law, John Cooper's graduation from the U.S. Army War College. And I'm a graduate of that esteemed university as well in 2013. But you understand what you learn in that school? And here's the motto for the United States Army War College. You promulgate and train and understand war so you can promote peace. It's not a warmongering university. What it talks about is the diplomatic, informational, military, and economic elements of power and how nations have applied that for centuries, for millennia, to keep their nation strong and to preserve and protect their nation states. And that's very important. Nobody understands this like I do. And we are right now, as a congressman, in the diplomatic phase, and somebody that understands the military should understand how important the military is. Now, you have to be very careful with your military application of power, because once you do that, then you enter in war. And we know how, and I personally know, because I've served in 2 combat tours, when you make that decision, that you don't get to pull back very easily. And we lose treasure and blood. So I think that's why that matters, good sir.
Okay, I want to ask you about a potential domestic use of the U.S. military. You know what I'm getting
Absolutely.
at here. Yeah.
I wish you'd asked me that question in the debate, because I'm the most qualified to answer.
Well, let's get after it now. Former President Donald Trump is talking about deporting as many as 17 million people he says are in this country illegally. He says that first off, that would be done with the local police and then the National Guard, and he has said the military if necessary. We both know in order for him to deploy the military within the United States, right, there's only a couple of ways for him to do that. Insurrection Act, posse comitatus, that kind of thing. So obviously there's steps that he would have to take. I want to hear your experience as it relates to how that could be done practically. How would it actually work if Donald Trump wanted to send the National Guard or the military into the 4th District to start pulling people out of homes to deport them?
Certainly. So, you ready? Because I have the answer. No other candidate in this field can give you this answer. They're not qualified, but I am, and here's why. I served in all 3 components in the U.S. Army. I served on active duty all over the world. I served in the National Guard. I also served in the United States Army Reserve. Now, here's the first thing you do with respect to that, and the president does have to issue the order, okay? There's this thing called military support to civilian authorities, and that is a mission that both Reserve and National Guard can do, and active duty under certain orders with certain criteria and conditions. So what you have to do is you have to call NORTHCOM, and oh, by the way, NORTHCOM has been alerted because we have Russian military warships in Havana, because NORTHCOM is the combatant command, the COCOM, for North America. So first you do that. The military is stood up in that mission. Then you set up what's called a joint task force. Okay, that joint task force is going to have a general officer. That general officer is going to have a civilian leader that they have to answer to in the Department of Defense. Okay, because we have this unique thing in this country that the military works for the civilian authorities. And they should. That's very important. And that's a key tenet of military service. So then after NORTHCOM has stood up and we set up this JTF, I don't know what you want to call it. They always think of very unique names. Then you will activate Reserve, National Guard, and maybe call in active duty units. You didn't get this answer from the last person you asked.
I'm not sure I got an answer from you to my question.
Hold on.
How does it work
when,
say, the Army rolls into Highlands Ranch
but they're not going to do that. We're not going to do that.
Who's going to do it?
No, let me tell you. Okay, so what you're going to do after you set this up.
Oh, for the love. Just tell me. Who's going to go in and do it? Trump says it's going to be the local military, National Guard, or the military. Who's actually going in to pull upwards of 200,000 people out of Colorado? Who's doing it?
Let me give you the short answer.
Please.
Okay. The president could federalize the Colorado Army National Guard. The Colorado Army National Guard, under the direction of the Adjutant General, Laura Cleland, you know her? I went to the War College with her. She's a good friend of mine.
I don't doubt that. I'm just asking for an answer to the question.
So she gets the command.
Yep.
Then you attach units to local law enforcement and state law enforcement, and they work as augmentees to help. They don't run the mission. There's not bootjack thugs carrying M16s or M4s kicking in doors. That's not how it works, Kyle.
Who's kicking in the doors?
Nobody. I said they're not doing that. Let me state it again. Nobody's going to do that, Kyle. What they're going to do is these military personnel, as I have done when I stood up under Operation Noble Eagle, the TSA. Remember when that stood up?
Who's the deportation force? Who's the deportation force?
Well, first of all, we have laws in this state, and I ran a bill, an immigration bill, by the way, that said, and the immigration force is ICE. Let's start with that. Immigration Customs Enforcement. So everybody has to work under, the Homeland Security. Everybody has to work under ICE and augment and support Customs and Border Patrol, CBP. Now, so what you do is you take these military forces, it's a detachment, it's a platoon, it's a company, and they're assigned to work side by side, shoulder to shoulder with local law enforcement or state law enforcement and federal law enforcement, including ICE. So everybody has to work together. Now, there's a problem if you're a sanctuary state like Colorado and you passed laws in 2013 that say, which I tried to repeal through my legislation, if you looked into my bills this year, that said local and state law enforcement are not allowed to work with ICE in this state because we're a sanctuary state.
Would you be comfortable with those forces rolling into Parker, rolling into Akron?
But see, they're not rolling in. Here's what they do. They go and join, just like in any disaster. Okay, let's say Hurricane Katrina. Did you know that we had military forces go in there to help the cleanup? Engineer forces, yeah, in Florida. We've done this mission before, just in a different context under a different mission set. So it's not like you have a bunch of military combat units rolling in with up-armored Humvees, MRAPs, 50 cal swinging on the turrets. Been there, done that downrange. What you have is military members that are in uniform, and they're working with the civilian agencies that run the mission to augment and support them. And there may be a law enforcement arm because we do have this thing called the military police.
Let me ask you a question that's moral and not tactical.
Oh, but we can talk tactical all day. I'm very good at that, sir.
Is it the moral thing to do to deport 150, 200,000 people out of Colorado who entered the country illegally? Who should go, who should stay?
Now we're talking about immigration policy.
Yep.
So let's turn and talk about that, because I have a very unique position on that I think you need to hear.
Could you start with an answer to my question and then add whatever you want?
We'll work on that. So morally, it's not okay for a young woman that has a little 3 or 4 month old baby born in this country to pick her up and put her on a bus and send her somewhere maybe that she's never been before. Let's start with that. You know, I think humanly and in a human level and under the spirit of humanity, we wouldn't do that. We're better than that, I believe. But
Congresswoman Lauren Boebert says deport them all. Yeah, Donald Trump says 17 million. And I'm asking, what does Richard Holtorf think?
So let me tell you something. Lauren Boebert is a fool. She says, build the wall, deport them all. And she has no plan for doing that. I don't even think she could think of a plan if you gave her 10 hours. I've outlined exactly how it works here, what the connecting relationships are, and how you would have to do it. So I'm going to start talking about immigration policy. So what you have to do is, number one, you have to identify all the people. And I think they should be identified. Who is in the country, who has immigrated and crossed that border illegally. And you have to make it in a non-punitive way. Say, look, we know what happened. We know that this happened. But imagine if you had a doctor from Ecuador who is a cardiovascular surgeon, and he took the trip for whatever reasons. Maybe because his life was threatened by a hostile government or some hostile political players. And he's here and he can do heart surgery. Why would you want to ship that person away? So there needs to be a vetting process, and what I think should happen is once all these people are identified, we should determine who they are, what they are, where they're from, and they should be vetted. We should go back to their home countries and say, do you know this person? Do you know of this person? Does this person have a criminal record? Why do you think they left your country?
And their skills should play a role in whether or not they're deported? How about the length of time they've been in the country?
Well, I think all those factors are things to consider. I don't think any one of those criteria. But here's what I do think, Kyle, that's very important. We have a lot of areas where we're short on labor. Let's be honest. I work in agriculture. We need help. We need people working in fields. We need people working in the dairies. We need people working in our feedlots. We need vaqueros, and the Mexicans are great vaqueros. I'm telling you, a horseback and with a rope, they're amazing, a lot of them. So there's a lot of skills that can come from other countries that if they're here and they're vetted and they have a place in our society, we ought to consider a pathway to citizenship. We should also consider, Kyle, a pathway to citizenship for many people, particularly those that have a legitimate asylum claim. If I'm persecuted, if I've been politically persecuted because I'm from a different party, let's say you're from Venezuela, and we know Maduro and the communists there, if you're not on their side, they're going to want to kill you. They're going to want to do you very, very bad harm because you're not drinking the communist Kool-Aid. So what I'm saying is those people that have a true asylum claim, that needs to be given considein. Now, there are economic claims also that maybe aren't asylum claims. So that needs to
certainly. Sort something out for me, okay?
Yes, sir.
With, I pray, some brevity.
For me?
We're trying. We don't put a time limit on these interviews, but I've never had somebody test the system in the way that you are. So Donald Trump says deport them all. Lauren Boebert says deport them all. You offered me your military expertise on how one could deport them all. But then I felt like you were also saying, but I don't think that that's the wisest thing to do.
Well,
is that a fair description of what you're saying?
I would tell you I'd like to sit down with Donald Trump and say, Donald, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this so we can talk about how we can fix the problem. Many of them need to go home. Some of them may have some huge value to retain and keep in this country. You realize after World War II, look at all the German scientists that came over to our country that helped build our advanced technological weapon system and made us arguably the most powerful military in the world. German nationals, German scientists. You see, so a lot, and my father was a foreigner. And he worked for Johnson. I told you this before we sat down. He worked for Johnson & Johnson for 26 years. You know the value that he gave that company for a lifetime and a career? An American company from New Jersey, and he wasn't born in the United States. So there's a lot of foreigners that have contributed greatly to this country and who have become citizens and are very proud of that citizenship, to include my Spanish father. The thing he was most proud of in his bedroom that he hung on his wall right there, I saw it my entire life, was his citizenship document that he got. He was so proud of being an American citizen. Should those people be denied that? I don't know. But I think we have to have a much better plan, good sir, than the foolishness that Boebert purports, which is build a wall and deport them all. That's what a GED education will give you.
We're going to change gears because I want to get you back to Akron in time for dinner. This is more of a strategic question around politics. People will criticize party primaries because a relatively small number of people pick candidates in safe seats like CD4. Tell me if you see an issue with this argument. You could say that there are just 5 people who are making the choice to re-elect Lauren Boebert to Congress. Richard Holtorf, Mike Lynch, Deb Flora, Jerry Sonnenberg, and Peter Yu. That she is likely to be re-elected because the 5 of you together could not pick one person to run against her, and several of you could very well beat her head-to-head based on what we know from the polling that we've seen about her favorable, unfavorable, that kind of thing. But it's the 5 of you, for ego or pride or whatever else, that are reassuring that she goes back to Congress. Is that flawed logic?
No, not at all.
So why are you still in the race?
So, I was the first legitimate candidate to announce. As you said, I was a front runner. I was a forward thinker. I went after Ken Buck last summer and said, Ken, you are not representing Colorado. You're not representing this district. I'm going to help you pack your bag and leave Washington because you're not doing your job. And I've been in the 4CD and lived there for decades. So one of the things I announced, I started my exploratory committee, I announced and I filed. All these other candidates, every one of them, except me, as a legitimate statesman and public servant serving in office, I was the only one that filed before Ken Buck said, I'm not going to run again. Everyone else was on the bleachers and on the sidelines, all of them. Now, when Jerry called me and said, hey, I'm running, I'm going to put my name in the hat, I said, why, Jerry? I said, I've been in this for a month and a half. What are you doing? You're going to split votes, Jerry. Oh, Washington needs me. Oh, really? I think I can handle it, sir. I think you better just stay there and run the farm and be a Logan County commissioner. Oh, no, I've been wanting to do this my whole life. Okay, buddy, go for it. So we're going to split votes. So I've just made that point, see? So then there's Mike. Mike said the same thing. Mike and I are good friends. We serve in the state legislature together.
So I get it. You think that you're more qualified and you're best suited to do this. And the rest of them think the same thing. And now it's a six-way race. And even if a majority of folks in the 4th District don't want to elect Lauren Boebert, she's very likely to win because you all are in the race.
Let me tell you how you fix this. Colorado, listen closely. Bring the camera in here. Listen closely. Here's how you fix this problem. You vote for me. And then all the rest of it won't matter because I am the most qualified. If you look at my resume, if you line them up and we're just doing a resume interview and didn't know one face, which, oh, by the way, they do in corporate America and they do in many organizations, before they look at the final 1 or 2 or 3, right?
Have you heard you're supposed to keep the resume to a page? I hear that. Good one.
Touche.
I hear that's
touche. I can't argue that one. Right. That's a good one.
Okay. Another question. What can Congress do to help Americans with the cost of living? Right? The economy is roaring along right now, but a lot of people don't feel like it's helping them because, among other things, inflation has been bad for a while now. What can Congress do?
Well, the first thing on the way in here, I heard on the radio that the Fed said they weren't going to change interest rates. Now, I know the Fed isn't tied to Congress. I understand that. But I will tell you that the first thing you can do and the government can do and the Federal Reserve can do through also through signaling from the President and the Congress right now could do a resolution that's saying, hey, Federal Reserve Board, I think you should lower interest rates, and here's why. And here's a resolution to state such. Because when you lower interest rates, everybody's cost of living goes down immediately.
Do you think the Fed wants to get leaned on by Congress?
Well, the Fed gets leaned on by a lot of people, let's be honest. The president will call a chair or a vice chair and lean on them over the phone. There's all kinds of congressional people and congressmen and U.S. senators and U.S. congressmen, let's be honest, that are talking to people on the Federal Reserve Board. Let's be honest. Those conversations do happen. Now, they are independent arm, but they will listen. But right now, today, in my humble opinion, in this country, Federal Reserve should have lowered interest. 1/8 of a point, 1/4 point. They should have signaled to the economy that it's time to ratchet it down and bring down incrementally that cost of living for people.
What else can Congress do other than just lean on the Fed? Because, right, that's kind of a Hail Mary. Give me something else.
I'll give you something else. Okay, with respect to deregulation in so many sectors, because I'm in the agriculture industry. I've got to deal with regulations, and I've got to cover those regulatory costs. And those are difficult. But there are many deregulatory things that we could do in specific sectors of the industry, even if it's for a short period of time. You might say 24-month, 48-month, suspension or recession of certain regulatory requirements that have come through administrative agencies. Congress can pass those laws, and they can do that.
You can do that while keeping the food supply safe, keeping workers safe?
Yeah, you can. You can, incrementally. I'm not saying you throw the baby out with the bathwater, no. But there are things you can do that will bring down the cost of operations and the cost of production that then bring down the cost of the product. And that's just simple economics. For those of us that actually got a few degrees and went and studied economics, we might understand that. Supply-side economic system that affects everything. The demand side is roaring. Why, Kyle? Good question. It's because the population is growing exponentially. That pulls the demand side up. And when the supply side can't reach that, prices go up. Remember? Price elasticity of demand from economics?
There's all kinds of factors that play into that.
But that's one way to fix that, sir.
Okay.
That is one way.
I have a question for you about the way that you talk to people.
Sure.
You talk down to women, specifically the 2 women who are in this race for Congress. You have suggested that Congresswoman Lauren Boebert dresses like a prostitute. I've heard you repeatedly refer to Deborah Flora as Little Debbie. Why do you disrespect women like that?
Well, let's talk about my working with women.
No, just answer the question. Why do you talk about those 2 women like that so disrespectfully?
Okay, I'll answer the question, but remember, give me a chance to answer the question. First of all, you know what today is?
Today is Women's
Veterans Appreciation Day.
Yep.
You know who ran that bill?
I know that you ran a bill.
Prime sponsor. You know who pushed the bill across the finish line? Yours truly. The governor of the state even gave me praise. And the Adjutant General of the National Guard, who was there, a good friend of mine, even gave me praise for getting that bill across the finish line when some women, even the Democrat sponsor, pulled their name off the bill. So if I'm so disrespectful to women, why am I running that bill and why am I walking that up the hill to make sure women, veterans are appreciated and respected? Because I care about women. Okay, deeply care about women. You need to understand that. I respect women, deeply respect women. But here's where we have a problem, okay? With respect to the Congresswoman, okay? And I told you I raised 5 daughters, and I was trying to answer that question last time we met each other, but you cut me off pretty fast, and that's okay. I forgave you.
Why does having 5 daughters allow you to speak disrespectfully to women?
Let me tell you. Let me give you a chance. When you raise young girls and try to raise young girls to be respectful young women, okay, in the modern world, it's very important that they understand one thing, particularly if you're in a professional setting. You need to dress professionally, you need to act respectfully, and your behavior has to be a cut above. I've even said this to my girls. I've said your behavior has to be a cut above everybody else, particularly when people are looking at you. Now, I've been on the stage for 6 months now on the campaign trail with this Congresswoman. And I've stood by her and I've said, oh my goodness, I wouldn't stand by one of my daughters in a professional setting. I mean, you can be at a discotheque on a Saturday night at midnight, dancing yourself away and doing whatever you want to do. But on a stage in front of the entire state or electorate, and you're a congresswoman representing the state of Colorado, I think professionally you need to be at the highest level possible. And I think that matters. I think that matters.
Any of your damn business.
Because that person now wants to represent me as a CD4 electorate and a citizen. I live in CD4.
But your disrespect for women goes beyond clothing. Because, hold on. You also refer to Congresswoman Boebert as a little social media queen, just like you refer to the other woman in this race, Deborah Flora, as Little Debbie. Doesn't take a genius to figure out the way that you talk to women. And I'm asking you, why do you think you can do that?
So if I'm so disrespectful to women, how do I get all these bills passed with women, bipartisan prime sponsors? Let's talk about Junie Joseph, who sponsored my Social Security bill, which, oh, by the way, Colorado, was the only tax elimination bill in the state to reduce Social Security income tax to 0, from 4.4% to 0. How about Judy Amable? Both of these ladies are from Boulder, and they work with me. How do I have a relationship with them if I'm so horrible? How do they run bills with me if I'm so horrible? Because I'm not. Okay. How about Shannon Byrd?
I said you're disrespectful to women.
Well, am I?
Let me tell you something.
Because if I was disrespectful for women, and let's not get into an Indian leg wrestling match about this. I do want to tell you, if I was so disrespectful to women in a professional setting, do you think that those women would run bills with me? Mary Young?
Well, I'd have to ask them, but let me tell you something that one of your colleagues said, who has worked with you. Let me tell you something that somebody that you have insulted, a man, has said about you.
Oh, so now we're talking about men. Okay.
No, I'm just talking about you being offensive to people, okay? And this is Democratic Representative David Ortiz. who you called buckwheat, and you said that was fine. You guys sorted it out. And he said, yeah, definitely was not okay with the original comments of buckwheat. When I went up to him, meaning you, he said, I asked him why he always insists on saying stupid shit. People that you work with have said to you, I want to work with you, but why do you talk to people like this? And that's just a question that I'm asking you. It's not the first time you've heard the question. So I'm just asking you, have you reflected on it? Why do you talk to people like this?
So the first thing I'd like to say is David Ortiz and I have a great relationship. I don't know how old that comment is. I think it must be 4 years old, maybe 5.
He said it after the debate last week when you deflected a question about this same topic.
Well, David and I have a great relationship. I'll call him right now if you like. I got him on the phone. There's a high probability I'll answer and we talk about it. You know, David grew up in eastern Texas. I grew up in eastern Colorado. We're both military Army veterans. We're service members and brothers in arms together. We also served as co-chairs on the Veterans Committee, Veterans Caucus in the State House. So we have a great relationship. Now, I don't know what he said publicly to you. Privately, he hasn't said that to me. Okay? But we can have that conversation. Okay? Public comments, as you know, oftentimes are very different than private comments. But I will tell
Representative Ortiz's comment was posted publicly after you deflected our question last time about your offensive language. But it doesn't seem like we're going to get very far on that. So I have one last question for you.
Certainly.
This is also about a public comment that you made and something that we've talked about in the past. This question is about abortion. You have talked openly about various women that you have impregnated and one who had an abortion. And you said on the floor of the House, quote, I respected her rights and actually gave her money to help her through her important critical time so she could live her best life. In the legislature, you have voted to limit abortion access for other women, but you say that you respected your girlfriend's right to an abortion so that she could live her best life. If abortion was the best choice for your girlfriend, why try to deny that choice to other women?
So let me give you some context about that situation, because I'm a pro-life Catholic, and I believe everyone should choose life. Now, if you listen to my presentation on the House floor, did you listen to it?
I did, in fact. I just quoted from it.
Okay, so what was the major theme, and what did I repeat probably 20 times?
In
Hold on,
fairness,
let me help you.
Oh, I thought you were asking me a question.
No, go ahead.
In fairness, your logic was a bit scattered in that speech. What I'm asking you about is the fact that you said that you respected your girlfriend's right to an abortion and then gave her money to help her through an important time to live her best life.
You did exactly what I did.
But yet you've tried to deny that to other women. And I'm asking, why is an abortion good for your girlfriend, bad for other women? That's my question. Simple question.
Okay, so you deflected, and you did a good job of it, by the way. So the major theme of that presentation, if you listen to it, and I want you to listen to it again, choose life. 20 times I said, choose life. Now, there are times when that choice can't be made or it's complicated, particularly for the woman, okay? And I understand that. In that particular time, what were you doing when you were 20 years old and a junior in college? Well, you have to think about that a little bit. You probably had a girlfriend like I did, perhaps. You know, I found out that she was pregnant the week I deployed to military training in the summer of, I think it was 1986. And guess what you do when you have military orders? You deploy, okay? I went to Fort Lewis, Washington, spent a month and a half there. Then I went to Fort Ord, California, and spent another month. And then I came back from my military training to Fort Collins, Colorado, where I was attending as a student. Guess what my girlfriend told me she did, which I asked her not to do. I said, Kyle, we'll figure this out when I get home. Let's figure this out. We can figure this out. She had an abortion. Was that her choice? Yes. Did she have that right? Yes. Was it my choice, Kyle? No.
Why do you seek to deny the choice that you said was best for your girlfriend's life?
Let me finish explaining.
Why do you seek to deny it to other women?
Let me. I don't.
You have voted to restrict abortion access as a legislator.
And I have, and I've actually ran a bill, Kyle. Did you know that? Tim Guyton and I ran a bill that abortion after 22 weeks should be illegal.
That's what I'm referring to. That's the entire crux of this question, which you still have not answered. Why was it okay when you were the father?
It wasn't okay.
But that you gave her money and said it was for her best life. I'm just reading your own words.
Now you have to listen very closely, so let's get this out. Okay, when I came back, she'd already made the decision. She'd already had the abortion. I wasn't even in the state when she had the abortion, Kyle. I wasn't here.
Do you regret
I was in
saying?
California.
Do you regret
No,
saying that
I
you
don't-
respected
I don't
her
have any
rights?
regrets. I don't have any regrets. Let
Okay.
me
Do you
finish.
regret saying
Can I
that it was
please
so that
finish?
she could live her best
Can I
life?
please
Do you regret
finish?
saying
Can I
that?
please finish my sentence?
Do you regret saying that it was so that she could
Can I
live her best
please
life?
finish? I don't have any regrets in my life.
Okay.
Okay, but I want to finish the story.
Please.
Okay, I don't have these regrets. So when she came to me and said she'd had an abortion and she was having trouble financially, what does a good person do? Try to help another person that's in trouble. So I did give her money. I helped her. And we continued to date and try to salvage our relationship, which didn't work out. Okay, but I absolutely did help her because that was the right human thing to do. You talked earlier about, humanity and being a human first and being kind to people. That's what I did. And it was a very sad time in my life. 100%. It was terrible. Because now the son I could have had, I don't have. Maybe that young person could have grown up to be something very special. I don't know.
Do you acknowledge the disconnect between saying that an abortion was what was right for your girlfriend in her best life, but you have sought to deny that access to other women? Do you see the disconnect?
I understand your point, but I don't feel the same way you do. I don't think we should be killing babies willy-nilly. I don't think we should have, in Colorado right now, and I voted against it. You can see, heck, I debated on it. We debated for 26 hours on that bill. That bill was it was signed by the governor, and it is the most radical abortion bill in the United States of America. Up until the moment of birth, as the baby's coming out, full term, now you can take its life. Is that fair? Does the baby not have any rights, even coming out of the womb? Apparently not, because you can take that baby's life under Colorado abortion law. So that's the point I'm trying to make. And I'm a pro-life person. I think you should try to choose life every time. But there are exceptions. And there are times when you need abortion. Abortion is a medical procedure.
Is one of the exceptions when Richard Holtorf's the father?
No, it is not. It's not about me. Don't personalize it and make it about me. It's not.
You told the story on the House floor,
That doesn't
sir.
matter.
Okay.
That doesn't matter. That's a story.
Okay.
That's not that important. What's more important is the policy. The policy.
It's not. I mean, it was her life and her story. I mean, and you shared
and that's it.
publicly.
And it's her life.
And you
And it's
shared
her
it
life, and
publicly.
it was her choice, not my choice. It wasn't my choice.
Correct.
It was her choice.
It was
Kyle.
her choice. And as we've established, you've also sought to legislate that choice away from other women, and that's the thing that I was asking you to grapple with.
No, and I understand that.
We're at the 1 hour mark. At the risk of entering a second hour, is there anything that you feel like we have not talked about that you think is vitally important for voters to know?
Well, I really think that Colorado needs to understand that I'm a veteran, and veteran leadership matters. There's no other candidate that has that experience in this field, particularly in a dangerous world. Look at what's happening, Kyle. We have a war in Ukraine. We have a war in Israel. We have Russia sailing into Havana. We have the Taiwan Straits being incurred upon by China, and China threatening and has threatened to invade Taiwan. Now, if you study history, you can understand that the world is in a very difficult place right now. And arguably, we could be on the precipice of another world war. Very easily, that could come. Why is Russia sailing into Havana? Have you asked yourself that? We ought to. What is going on in the world? Why is Russia so bold? Why does Russia want to take Ukraine? Are they going to knock on the door to Poland? Because Poland's a NATO country. And they've invaded without hesitation and threatened to invade and incur in the stand states. They've even redrawn the borders. Did you know that? They've redrawn the borders and are taking more land. Who's standing up against that? Or are we just looking over that because we're more worried about abortion law in the United States? Because a world war will change your life and change my life and change everybody's life. And all of a sudden, things will start getting very different on what are your priorities, what are my priorities, and what are the nation's priorities. So that's one thing I want to point out. The next thing I want to point out is no-nonsense conservative. You pointed out very astutely that Lauren Boebert has passed one bill in 4 years.
One prime-sponsored bill passed by signed by the president.
Thank you.
Just wanted to clarify, but yeah, go ahead.
That's important. And how many have I done?
Well, you're working in a state legislature.
Doesn't matter.
It's a completely different system, but you've pointed out you are in the minority and you needed a governor of a different party to sign your bills.
38 bills.
Yeah.
Not only do you need a minority, good sir, you need a Democrat co-sponsor, or it's DOA in committee, near DOA in committee. It's an unstated imperative in our state General Assembly. So once again, you got to solicit Democrat sponsors, which I've done on all those bills. That's a lot of work, and that's a lot of work across the aisle. So we've established that point. With respect to no-nonsense conservative, and I am a conservative, okay? And, you know, I'm going to give it to you straight and tell you where I'm at and what I think needs to be done. Just like with respect to national security policy, just like with respect to deportation. I'm the only one that can have this conversation with you, and we need another hour just to lay it out. You need to give me a whiteboard, and I'll lay it all out for you, and I'll tell you exactly how it gets done in every community in Colorado if we need to do it in a way that's peaceful, okay, that's non-threatening, and takes care of the mission using military augmentees to support civilian authorities. So I have that experience. No other candidate has. Okay. Also, I want people to know that I go everywhere and I talk to everybody. Just like I came here without any hesitation. Let's talk about Jerry. Jerry Sonnenberg isn't going to come sit here across the table. He's probably scared to death to talk to you. Lauren Boebert's not going to sit across the table with you because she knows you gave her the business the other night in the debate. She's not ready for your business. She can't handle it. You see? But I'll talk to anybody at any length of time, as you know.
As you have proven here. State Representative Richard Holtorf, one of 6 candidates for Colorado's 4th Congressional District. We never put a time limit on these extended interviews. You have caused me to reconsider that, but I appreciate your willingness to come in and take all of the questions. As you point out, not everybody in the race is willing to do that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.